This episode is brought to you by Portland Distro. If you like underground music, movies, and more, go to portlanddistro.com for licensed merch, vinyl, CDs, and more. Plug in the discount code 10OFF, TENOFF, for a 10% discount at portlanddistro.com. Happy New Year and welcome to 2024. I hope everyone had a great holiday and now it's time to get back to the grind. To kick off the new year, welcome Alice Teeple, multi-disciplinary artist whose recent manifestation, Solve Et Coagula, is currently on display at the Shelter Gallery in Eldridge Street, New York City. It's going to be up until January 21st, so please, if you're in the New York City area, find some time to go check it out. Before we get started, I'd like to shout out the rest of the horsemen of the podcasting apocalypse. Kicking the week off, we have Brandon Legion with Horror Wolf 666, followed by Jackie Smith Into the Necrosphere, the greatest metal podcast on the internet. Midweek, I come at you with Everything Went Black, followed by my return with Mike Scandato and Jeff Kashid with Necromaniacs. Rounding out the work week, we have Spitball Media featuring Mike Scandato's brother, John Draper. Saturday is a day off. Sunday, Carl Hikara deploys Soul Knox, a show dedicated to all things macabre, esoteric, and weird. Carl and I are currently doing our collaboration Darkness Weaves, which explores the work of Carl Edward Wagner. Our newest member, Cheyenne of the band Trivax, comes at us with Iblis Manifestations. So we continue our war on mediocrity. If you enjoy the show, please share on your social media, tell your friends about it, give us a 5-star rating. All that stuff matters. So thanks for joining us this evening, Alice. Much appreciated. I
Nice
got
to
a
be
chance.
here.
Yeah, no, it's great, you know. So Solve A Coagula, is that the correct pronunciation for that?
Sure. I only took one semester of Latin, so that sounds good to me.
Yeah. Whenever you use Latin, it airs a certain level of gravitas to a statement. You know what I mean? It sounds more ominous.
Yes. Yes, we like ominous.
Yeah. So before we get into that, I'm always interested to find out, a little bit about people's backstory, the environment that they grew up in, how they ended up where they are, and things that might have influenced them, especially when I'm talking to someone who is embarking on a creative pursuit. You can kind of piece together if someone's like a plumber or pipe fitter or something like that. Like what, okay,
Right.
great. I grew up in a working class environment and I pursued the same sort of things that everyone around me did. But from my understanding, you grew up in a more rural area of Pennsylvania. So
Right.
when I think of that, having traveled fairly extensively across the country, having been around certain rural areas and trying to square that sort of environment with someone who is pursuing something that is a little bit more sort of esoteric as the stuff that you're doing. So how do you get started? What was it like growing up in like a more rural town? And how did you find the inspiration to do these creative pursuits?
Um, I've always felt like an alien no matter where I live, but I grew up in the middle of Pennsylvania, which is Center County, like very literal there. The eastern tip of Center County, in a very farm-like area. There's a lot of Amish farms, a lot of just small family farms where I grew up, and I did grow up in a working class family. My dad was a laborer at Penn State. He worked on different crews, to renovate buildings or set up for concerts, you name it. He did a bunch of stuff. And my mom was a school teacher for years. Um, so they always encouraged me to be creative from day one. Like I think it's just always been something that's been ingrained in me. So, we might not have any money, but they'd give me like a ream of paper and a box of crayons and just be like, do what you want. And so my early childhood was really isolated, and we lived kind of in the middle of nowhere, and I didn't really have much outside interaction with kids. It was mostly just like my parents' friends and people we'd see out and about, but I was pretty isolated. And so that really allowed for my imagination to grow. And then when I was in first grade, my dad took over this little museum in Aaronsburg, which is where I'm from. And my dad actually had a degree in I forget, I think it was he had two degrees, history and political science. So he'd started working on the labor crew as a means to, just put himself through school, and he liked it. So there was never like really any differentiation between like academic pursuits and stuff that you enjoyed. Like my parents just kind of did what they wanted. And that's definitely how my life's gone as well. Like I've just kind of, I never really had like a set path for anything. So yeah, that's
That's
kind of
actually that's actually a pretty healthy way of raising a child, I think. You know what I mean? I
yeah,
mean, in my experience, it was kind of the opposite of that, really. Just
yeah.
very traditional kind of background, like middle class, sort of working class vibe, blue collar, expectations put on, people in certain ways. And it didn't sound like that was something that entered into your early life, which is like pretty healthy, actually.
Yeah, not my early life. I think that started kind of creeping in when I got older, and I kind of put it on myself, like, okay, I better figure this out. But there's always been a lot of artists in my family here and there. Like my great aunt was an artist, my uncle's an artist. But they all always kind of went the commercial route or the academic route, and I tried that for a while, and it wasn't for me. So on either counts. I think um as far as like being an artist goes, I think you're just born one, and then you have the good fortune of either having that encouraged in your life and you get to pursue it a little bit, or it can get stifled, I think, in a lot of people's cases, or they feel imposter syndrome for something that's really stupid. I
So,
think it's something that needs to come out of you.
were you aware of the difference between like high art and like, or like classics or things like that, and like illustration? Like, what did you kind of experience that
Yeah.
thing all at once, or did it sort of come in waves?
It came in waves. I mean, my parents always just let me do whatever I wanted when I was really little, and then when I started kindergarten, I had a really restrictive teacher who just basically slammed out any like mode of creativity from all children. It was a awful juxtaposition, and my parents really fought hard to help me keep an even keel with that. And like they'll be like, well, do whatever you can to shut your teacher up, but like at home it's okay to draw the way you want. And you know there's always been that kind of push pull of what people say you should be doing and what I instinctively want to do. So I'm all over the place as an artist. But as I got older, I had a really great art teacher in elementary school who, she got me like Mark Chagall, and she would like send me to the library and say, look up this artist. And like there was no judgment of like what was high art or what wasn't until I got to college, and then it was a lot of snobbery. So I've spent a lot of time to just kind of unlearn what I learned in college.
Yeah, I'm not a, a quote unquote artist, but
Yeah.
yeah, I know a lot of people like that have, you know, traveled similar paths. And one of the benefits they did say about getting a formal education, though, is that it did open them up to things that they may not have found on their own, which
Oh
I can see a lot
yeah.
of value in that for sure.
Totally. Yeah, I lucked out. I didn't take a BFA route. There were two paths you could take at Penn State, and I luckily took the path that was integrative arts, which basically was like this Montessori approach to college. And it was, you can take classes outside of art and mix it with art somehow. And instead of like taking only painting classes for 4 years, you could take a writing class, or you could take, a science class if you want to be like an illustrator. It was the most wonderful thing that could possibly have happened for kids like us that, had a bunch of interests and, maybe talents in certain things, but didn't want to be pigeonholed. And of course, they got rid of that program years later. But I had a great advisor, Bill Kelly. He just, he's like, do whatever the hell you want. And, that freedom allowed me to really expand my own interests. And when I was in college, it was right at the dawn of the digital age. So, I'm a Zennial. I was born in 79. We were indoctrinated with computers from like kindergarten up. And so I had like no fear of learning new technology by the time I was an adult. But I also had that kind of adult perspective of, what can we use this stuff for? They gave us all of this technology and like they didn't know like how to like teach it to us. We had to kind of self-teach ourselves how to be artists with this new digital technology. So I've been using it. It's weird. I've been using like images from the past, like from my museum childhood, and mixing it with, very new technologies and effortlessly. Like I think they're both part of my life. So it's never been just like an aesthetic choice or whatever. It's like I actually used to play with a stereoscope as a kid, but also like would play Carmen Sandiego. So yeah, I feel like I'm bridging two worlds all the time with my work.
Well, let's talk about the museum bit because you
Mhm.
were talking about how your dad, ended up, I guess I was running the museum or curating or something like that.
Yeah. Yeah, it was like a basement of a church, like it was basically like the dumping ground of all of the valley's, historical objects, but it was a lot of farm equipment, stuff from the one-room schoolhouses, old photographs mostly that I really latched onto. There's an old pump organ, there was like a dentist set. So like my sister and I would play down there and, interact with these objects like that was our toys. So and my parents are very much like, hands-on education people. So, you know, that really sparked my imagination as a kid as well. Very unusual, but I didn't even think about that until I got older, and I was like, man, that was weird.
Well, photography, especially from like, early 20th century is like, that's like very interesting stuff. Like I have a
Oh
collection
yeah.
of photographs that I've accumulated that I found in like basements of houses I've lived in and things like that. And
Hmm.
yeah, it's like these fragments of time, like these like
Yeah.
viewports into someone else's past.
Yep.
And I'm just trying to connect that with like your current work that you have right now.
Right,
And
yeah.
yeah.
So I would look at these images constantly and wonder like what were these people like? What did they do? How different were they from my life? Some of them were related to people I actually knew. There would be like their ancestors and I'd be like, "Oh wow, that looks like, Mrs. Bird down the street when she was young." Like it's interesting because like a lot of the people in my town when I was little were all elderly. So I'd be like riding my little bike around and just hanging out with like the lady down the street who was like 80 years old making quilts and like it was like a real time warp. And so I think that really informs how I make my work today and in any capacity. Like if I'm doing video or photography, it's I'm not necessarily like married to a certain aesthetic, but that's something that I'm always working with. If it's even like the process too, like I'll shoot like digital pictures and then process it in a 19th century style darkroom, or I'll use antique cameras to make something, or I'll use like old types of film process. I got really interested in alternative process photography, and I like the ease of shooting with digital and knowing what you get, but also the crazy experimental nature of it.
All the photography stuff, was that something you learned on your own, or was that something you studied, like, the technical aspects of that as part of your education process?
I was too broke in college to take the photography program, so that was also the appeal to take on integrative arts because they provided all of the computer labs for us so we could experiment with stuff. And I didn't get into traditional photography like through college. I had a work study where I worked in a darkroom, so I learned like how to process film there, but it wasn't a formal class. That was like take pictures of professors and then like, process them in the sink, like it was very bare bones, but it gave me like a good idea of how to do that, like chemical process. But that was all on the way out by the time I was done my college career. Like nobody wanted to do analog photography anymore. They thought the darkroom's dead. This is all going to go by the wayside. Nobody cares anymore. So people were getting rid of their cameras and film and stuff left and right. And I was like, I see the value of this and I'm going to like hold on to it because I think 10 years down the road, they're going to have a change of heart. And sure enough, lomography started coming out and they would be like, here's like reproductions of this stuff. And, all of a sudden people started having a more appreciation for these old processes, and then they treated it more like an art form rather than a means to an end. So rambling a little bit, but yeah, it's been a very odd like time trajectory of just like how these images are created versus like what the zeitgeist says, all that stuff.
Yeah, that stuff always seems like just like alchemy to me. You know what I mean?
Yeah, it's
One,
awesome.
yeah, like one of the, I mean, I can relate to that primarily through music because
Mhm.
that's mostly what I do is music and
Yeah,
talking to people, but the yeah, even like recording on analog tape, and
yeah,
the ironic thing though is like people will try to model rooms and things like that and circuit paths and all these different, amps and stuff like that electronically.
yeah.
And the actual room still sounds better, you know what I mean? It still
Very
has more
similar.
character.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's very
Yeah.
similar. I think music and photography have been sort of like the bastard children of all of this technological revolution. You know, we had certain ways of doing things for years, and you had like the purists that are like, "Oh, I'm not accepting anything new," and then you have the people that are tech heads that are like, "Oh, this is all, out the window. We don't need this anymore." And I think the real artists are the ones that can see value in both and work together and creating these sounds. Like, I write for postpunk.com, and a lot of the bands that we review are really either embracing technology from 50 years ago, like using old synths only to really get that 80s sound, or they're using Ableton in their bedroom and creating these amazing pieces like that wouldn't have been able to been done like 30 years ago unless you hired like a studio for a couple weeks. So I think there's a lot of parallels there. Yeah, I get it.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, on the digital stand, front with music, it's like now by yourself you can create so much material. And there's a
Yeah,
lot of freedom in that. But yeah, like a combination of the two things, like, the analog world and the digital world, I think really that's kind of where it's at. I mean, one
yeah,
platform kind of complements the other, which it seems like that's the same case with visual arts too.
I think so. Yeah. I remember when all this stuff started coming out, people were really freaking out about it. Like I'm in between Gen X and millennials. So like, you'd have kids still in high school that were messing around with stuff and excited about it, but didn't really have much perspective. And then you had Gen Xers who were slightly older that were really suspicious of all computer stuff. And then they were facing, already like a job shortage because they were trained in school to only be able to do stuff an analog way. So a lot of them had to completely change career paths within a couple years of graduating. It was weird. I think that really echoes today. Like, I don't know if we've really quite reconciled any of it. It's just like we just kind of move forward as artists, musicians, any of that stuff, and just kind of adjusted as things have gone and come up.
It's going to take a quick sidebar here. So you write for postpunk.com?
What's that?
Are you a writer for postpunk.com?
Yes.
Oh, wow. Had you had just a little quick side path here. How'd you get into writing? That's like like out of
I, you know what?
necessity, something you just enjoy doing.
one of my many paths in life. My parents are both writers, and it's just something natural I've always done, had a knack for. So that's one of the things I've always been interested in.
I mean, what is that the style of music you're mostly into is like, sort of post-punk, dark wave kind of, that sort of electronic music, that sort of vibe.
I love all that stuff. Yeah. I listen to everything. And when I say everything, I mean like, you know, Curtis Mayfield to like classical to country music. Like I like all of it. Except for like, certain genres like I'm just not connecting to. But yeah, that's largely what I write about. And I think it's been really rewarding because, it's interesting to talk to so many artists and, you know, hear their process and think about like what's really going on. And a lot of the stuff that we cover is underground. So, you don't hear it on the radio. It's not top 40. It's all the good stuff that people are craving, but it's hard for them to find an outlet.
So somewhere along the line, you moved to New York and
Yeah.
from Pennsylvania. So what was your impetus? I mean, that's a pretty self-explanatory sort of question. Oh, really obvious question, but
Oh, I
so
was running away.
what brought you to New York, basically?
I ran away to New York. I taught at Penn State for a while and it was really bad. And there was a few incidents that just broke me and I was like, I need a fresh start. I can't be here. There was no room to grow there. And it was a hostile environment. So why not come to New York? But it's been wonderful here. This place has been, I mean, it's been really hard and I've like I've had a very challenging path here, but I'm very happy to live in New York. I love it here.
Did you have something lined up to do out here, or you just like rolled up,
Oh, I
and
rolled up. My friend and I stuffed everything in a Jeep Wrangler and I tore off. Like I sold everything I owned. Moved to an 8x8 bedroom in Flatbush for a while until like we had like a lot of problems there, but I've just bounced around sublets for the past almost decade.
But I mean, it's even that in and of its like
I've
can't
lost you.
even just moving to a city like that, with no real plan is kind of like an odyssey in and of itself. Like I know many people who, oh yeah, I'm moving to New York, and then they show up and they last for like 6 months, and they're like broke or something horrible happens to them, or they get robbed, or like they get hooked on drugs or something like that, and the next thing you know, they're like gone, like in a year, less than a year.
I
So
think
the
because I was older, I was 35 and I'd been through a bunch of shit already, it was easy. I mean, relatively speaking. Um, Alex Baker, who runs Post Punk, he said the other day I had a tremendous amount of tenacity, and he meant that as a compliment, and I think it's true. It's like I'm here to do my work, make friends, enjoy my life. Like, you know, when you have like certain things that happen in your life that kind of inform what you'd rather be doing with it. In my case, I got hit by a car and I was just like, well, I could go at any time. So what am I going to do with my life? I don't want to waste it. So I think that's been like the main driving force for my work.
yeah, I guess like discipline distractions, in New York City, because I've had many experiences with band members and people who,
Oh yeah.
they want to do this and that, and they're talented too, you know what I
Yeah.
mean?
Oh
And
yeah.
they're just find they get on the wrong path, and then talent's all wasted. And
It's a shame. Yeah. I mean, I've seen that countless times and it's, you know, it's awful, but I think also the situations that people are put in right now, especially financially and, emotionally, COVID happening and like all this awful stuff happening in the last 10 years, it's been tumultuous. And I don't know, people also need a means to self-soothe, I guess. Um, it's a complicated thing. I mean, I could see it as that, but also like, how much more would we accomplish if we had situations where people like could thrive, you know? Like where would
yeah,
we be
there's
in society?
There's like I think a fine line though in some ways between like resistance and I hate to say that, but it's because I suffer from being under the yoke of resistance sometimes, but in
Yeah.
some ways that sort of motivates you to push in a lot of ways, even though it's stifling and at times you feel like you're drowning, but there's a certain level of extremity that I think benefits people who are doing something creative, you know?
Yeah, I think so. I mean, it's a lifeline for many of us, certainly. I'm not really somebody who's very confrontational. And if something's gone on in my life that I feel awful about, a lot of times I'll just make something as a reaction rather than like deal with it head on. I would say that my work is probably an addiction. I tend to jump into it, and it's like I don't know, dissociation kind of thing. Um, if my exhibit that's up right now is kind of the culmination of the last 2 years. And, I look at it on the wall and I'm like, holy shit, Alice, like that was intense. And then, when you have like something tangible to look at, it's humbling.
All right, so now it's a good point to start talking about Salve a Coagula.
Right.
Nothing new can be built without breaking old patterns. Now, is
Yeah.
that a literal translation? Is that a literal
Mhm.
translation of that?
Yeah, I would say it's probably as close as it gets. I mean, it's a phrase that's been used a lot over the years. It's the title of a Tuxedo Moon album. Um, it's a philosophy that has been my life the last 10 years. I tore my life apart to move here. I have done it over and over again every time I've moved, every time I've like tried something anew. And I think if if you know anything about tarot, it's like the tower card. You're tearing everything down, and it's like death card. You're moving into a new transformation. But there's nothing there that like you can't create something from. I feel I really do. And as bad as it's gotten over the years, it's never been so bad that I can't just like find time to kind of think about it and put that in my work.
You mentioned tarot was it too?
What's that? Your microphone's.
You mentioned tarot, like the tarot deck.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, does that figure into your work at all?
Um, Not directly, but I mean, my friends and I do readings for each other.
No, I mean, no, that's interesting. I mean, that's I wouldn't say that I'm accomplished to that stuff, but something I'm very much into all that esoteric sort of,
Yeah,
knowledge and all that.
I think that there's a big use for it. I think it's a good way to help you. It's like a guiding force, it's not necessarily like woo with the spirits, but it's also a way. It's almost like somebody said it was like a form of psychology for people who can't go to therapy. It's like if you let like divination kind of pull your way through and you kind of take yourself out of it, it helps you kind of reassess where you're going or what's happening in your life, or really, step out of yourself for a little bit and, think about something that could be better for you. I think that's how we all treat it.
I think it's interesting to get familiar with the cards themselves and the imagery on it, and really study like what the community how it's trying to communicate, and also
Yeah.
just like magic in general, is not like pulling a rabbit out of a hat, but like meditating on something with intention,
Yes.
as opposed to casting spells, and that's not really something I think is at least in my opinion um valid, shall we say. But like to use certain symbols, and there's power in certain imagery, and being able to like I said, meditate on something with intention and use visualization and that sort of stuff. And that's what I think
Oh
is probably
yeah,
very powerful in creative process.
absolutely. That's really a great point. It's that is something that I definitely put into my work. It's like um if you think it, you can manifest it. So I think all artists and musicians do that. regularly. That's literally what we're creating something out of nothing, or things that we have in our immediate. We're creating something out of nothing essentially. And sometimes it's directly from our own minds. Sometimes it's reflecting something we see. Sometimes it's just commenting on what we're experiencing. But yeah, absolutely, it's all part and parcel of that.
So now, I haven't had a chance to see the pieces that you have shown that are being shown right now.
Oh yeah, we haven't really photographed them formally yet.
Oh, okay, all right. So I'm not like late to anything, right?
No.
All right, all right. So how? All right. So let's start. Where is it showing, and how long is it being hung?
We just had our opening. It's at the Shelter Gallery in Chinatown, New York City at 127 Eldridge Street. Shelter Gallery is just a lovely space. It's, right kind of on the fringe of the Lower East Side in Chinatown, like right on the border. And it's showing until the 21st of January.
So this is the kickoff episode of Everything Went Black for 2024. So there's plenty of time for people to go out in the New York area and check it out.
Awesome.
So now there's this in the description. It says 19th century mourning practices.
Right.
I'm completely unfamiliar with that. So what is that?
So, especially after the Civil War, but right around the time Queen Victoria lost her husband in the 1840s, there became a real formalization of public mourning. It started off sort of a fashion statement, almost like Queen Victoria would get these elaborate dresses and everything would be black, and there'd be jewelry specifically made, or certain kinds of gloves, and there would be a lot of almost like Jane Austen style manners of how long you were to wear these garments, or how long you were supposed to be in mourning, depending on how close you were to the person who passed. So if it was like your husband, you had a year or something. But there became this whole industry that wrapped up around this, around death, because people died more often and younger, and I think people had nowhere to really put that grief, so they created objects, and they created space for people to put that. Now, that wasn't true for everybody. I think it really depended on class and all that other stuff as well. But there was a sort of language that people understood that when you lose somebody, there is a time period where you have the freedom to process that loss. And we don't have that today. It's something that's really devoid in our culture. It's like, I know people that lost their parents, and their job would be like, well, okay, come back on Monday, or can you get this done before the funeral? Like literally have that happen to them. And I think it's horrible. I think it really messes us up as a society, especially after COVID. Like, all of us lost people, and we are grappling with massive loss, and there's nowhere really to put it. And so people are like fighting each other online, or just going after things, because I feel like there's a lot of sadness that they don't know where to place it, and they'll just like throw it or project it onto other people. That's my take on it.
No, that's interesting, and and it's like one of those great mysteries in life. You know what I mean? Like,
Yeah.
when you look at someone like who has passed away recently, and you kind of like ruminate on the idea of this person being alive, and then now they're just like material,
Yeah.
and like, where does that essence go? Like, it just vanishes into this great vortex to never to come back, and
Yeah.
it's like in every society has their own way of dealing with that, and
Yeah.
in our society, I just feel like, maybe we're just completely out of touch with all these things. And
Yeah.
now it's interesting about these mourning practices that's the Victorian era, the
That's
19th
the Victorian
century.
era.
Yeah.
Yeah, especially it really took off after the Civil War. And then you'd had the spirituality movement kind of come around the same time. People are desperate to, make contact with their lost ones. And, there were so many people lost in such a short amount of time. And I'm fascinated by just how people coped with it. And this is where, my childhood came in. It's like, I really was interested in all that because we had that stuff in the museum. We had funeral bonnets. We had, memorabilia cards that people would hand out at funerals. We had like fans from funeral homes, like really, like it was just weird by our standards that like, like a funeral home would be advertising on a calendar, which is kind of awesome, but also just like, wow, that's grim. Like, are you gonna make it to the end of this calendar? Like it's just weird. But these are things that I kind of grew up with. I remember I was talking about this with my dad recently. When I was like maybe third grade, there was this girl that I knew in school who I was at her house and she was like, "Oh, we have this photo album from the 1800s and there's like dead kids in it." And I didn't know anything about postmortem photography at that point. And she shows me these pictures and we're just like, ew. And, we run around the house, like, scared of these pictures. And then I remember asking my dad about it. I'm like, why did they do that? And he said, well, it was really special to have your picture taken, 150 years ago. And some people couldn't afford to do it. And then somebody would lose their kid. They would die, they'd get sick or they drown or something. And sometimes those photos were the only way to remember that person. And, so people did that, they would take photographs of, the dead, and it would be like the only photograph they had of them. That became these really powerful keepsakes. And now it's like big business of like antique dealers are like, buy this postmortem photo. And I'm a little like, I'm freaked out by that. That's weird to me, but
Yeah, that is a little ghoulish, actually.
yeah, it's like a, ew.
Yeah. But I mean that's heavy, man. If you think about the only time someone's been photographed was when they're
Yeah.
dead and not in their, vitality of their life,
Not only that, but they paid big bucks for it. Like that would be like the equivalent of paying like $1,500 today to have your photo taken. Um, one photo of somebody coming in, with their 4x5 camera, a horse and buggy to photograph, your dead uncle and like they're like laid out on an ice box. It's really gruesome, but I think we're also really removed from death. Like that was normal to them, even though it was horrible and they still felt the same grief. Like that was a lot more normalized. Whereas today it's just like, I think I was like an adult before I saw my first dead body. We're um we're that removed from something that is that happens to all of us. And we don't want to think about it. I don't know when it became so sanitized. I would say probably it started in the 50s after the war, I guess. I don't know.
Yeah,
It's like
maybe.
both sanitized and like, then you'd have like Vietnam where you see people dying live on television. Like it's really weird how like the business of like the funerary practices have shifted. I don't it's like it's a huge umbrella thing.
You bring up a really good point because, these days, you know, people film all sorts of violent things. People get killed. There's like,
Oh yeah. Yeah, like on
all
TikTok.
yeah, all the various conflicts that are going on in the world right now. You can see, video basically live of people losing their lives, and
Horrible.
like back in the 90s, there was like that Bud Dwyer suicide
I
clip that
remember that.
everyone
Yeah.
had had that on some VHS tape and stuff.
Oh yeah, my godfather was a state representative of Pennsylvania, and I mean he knew Bud Dwyer. Um, I remember when that happened. I remember just like I would say maybe 20 years ago, some band came through State College and they had written a song about him. It was it was weird. I was like, wow, that's it was. I think the song was like his last words, like "This is gonna hurt somebody," was the title of the song, and I was like, that's Bud Dwyer. I know that.
I used to have it on a VHS tape with like a survival research labs, like clip and like crash worship and stuff like that. And
Yeah.
then, and the Bud Dwyer suicide like
Oh
segment. And
yeah. There was
it
also
was,
like Christine Chubbuck, I think was her name. That was the first person who did it. And then it's like the movie Network. Like they saw that movie and were just like, oh, that sounds great. I'll do that. Um I think
All right,
also
so
too, creepy pasta, that kind of
yeah,
thing of just like watching that in the early internet and just like the titillation of seeing these horrible images. That also was a phenomenon that a lot of people have forgotten about. Like that was a very zennial and millennial kind of thing. It's like you have really young people just like going on the internet and seeing like, you know, so and so's heroin overdose. Like that was weird.
it's that's like an interesting thing in society and with the internet, you know, and it's like, I
Yeah.
mean, back before the internet, you experienced the world with just your tactile like senses. Like you take things in through your eyes, you smell stuff, you feel things with your hands. But now there's like this almost like infinite uh cachet of media out there and experiences that you're removed from, you know what I mean? And
Oh
it's
yeah.
distancing. It's very distancing in a lot of ways, but also maybe desensitizing a little bit because you're not experiencing it firsthand. And I
I would
just,
say so. Yeah, that's a really good point. Like we're only sensing through visual and audio, basically. We're taking out the smell element. We're taking out like, you know, the taste of bile coming up in your mouth. Like those things are visceral reactions that you would see, you know, like say you actually did come across an overdose, which, you know, I have done. And like the actual experience of that, of seeing that right in front of you is just like, holy shit. And then, you know, like you see it on an internet picture and it's like, you know, just another day, I'm just gonna scroll through, here's another cat video. It's messed up.
that's like really the biggest, strangest phenomenon to me is like
Yeah.
within a matter of seconds, you can expose yourself to like such a variety of different images. Like you're saying, a cat video,
Yeah.
beheading, like an ad for like, you know, whatever shoes or something like that.
Yeah, so
You know,
that's literally the TikTok experience. It's like a Russian roulette of all sorts of bizarre stuff. I don't know how that's going to affect people down the road. It's very
it's attention spans, I imagine, because people's attention
yeah.
spans, you know,
But
incredibly
also
short
just
these
like
days.
our capability of empathy and understanding, you know, like the whole of an experience. I think that's really um something that people are glossing over. Maybe just because it's too awful to think about.
Right, so now talking about desensitized experience, we're talking about Victorian mourning and
Yeah.
post-mortem photos. So how does this aggregate of things you're into your work right now with the pieces that you have?
The pieces that I have are a mix of different kind of media. So my mom and I created quilts. Um, and then I used cyanotype fabric, which is it's fabric that's coated with certain chemicals that are photosensitive. So you can make, you know, a digital negative and process it in your bathtub. It's very easy to do. And the fabric looks really cool. And I thought, well, what if I made objects, you know, out of these fabric cyanotypes? And so my mom and I made quilts and um, sweetheart cushions, which is like these were things that like British soldiers created for their girlfriends and sisters back home. They were like tokens of affection. So yeah, the British Army encouraged embroidery at one point. Um, there was I made a set of stereoscope cards with photographs that I took of two friends. I did um, just paper sculptures, and all of the photographs were taken in places of sorrow. So I went with my friend Joseph Keckler up to Letchworth Asylum, and we shot a series there. And we wanted to do something kind of more about the elements. So there's a lot of symbolism in the pictures. And then my friend Adrian Sexton and I did a series in Greenwood Cemetery and Trinity Cemetery up in Harlem. And so those three places were all pretty much where most of the pictures were shot. And then I also did a series where I was like in my childhood part of Pennsylvania. So a lot of self-portraits as well.
Interesting. So much death. Like what is the fascination?
There's
with
no fascination. I think it's more of like, um, I don't see death as an ending. I see it as like a doorway to something else, a transformation, like the death card in the tarot. I mean, we've all certainly lost people in our lives, and we feel that loss, but I never sense that that's the end of something. I feel that that energy continues on as something else. So it's not necessarily seeing death as like a morbid situation. I wanted this collection to be about healing and acceptance of transformation.
so
So
that's
yeah,
more of like a something to help soothe people that are still left behind
that's right.
in this realm that we're in right now.
Absolutely. Yep. This is about our own deaths that we have every day when we change into something new and we grow as people. I see that as a form of death. I see I created a series of embroidered body parts that my friend and I wired with LED lights that respond to sound frequencies. So if you play a certain hertz tone, like a certain light will light up. Or I made a embroidered heart where if noises get louder, it beats faster. I wanted people to have objects that they could touch and interact with rather than just look at on a wall and feel sad. Like I wanted people to hold a cushion or interact with the stereoscope. Um, find windows of connection. And that was a big process for me to like go like at the opening, I wasn't quite prepared for how much people were connecting. And so, I have like 2 years of my life kind of invested in all these objects. And it was really weird to see them go from a pile in my home to like people really feeling something with them. And it was moving, like I wanted, that was exactly what I was hoping for, was that, regardless of what the intent was of when I created them, I wanted to see how people received them. And it was beautiful.
So all these pieces are they're being shown in a gallery, but there seems to be like a lot of like this might lend itself to some kind of project where it's being captured on video or something to really get the full experience of people who can't go there firsthand. Is there any plan for that sort of thing?
Yeah, usually Rachel, the gallery owner, and Tyler will do, like a thing, like they'll have like an online gallery tour. I haven't done that yet. We literally just had the opening, and so they documented all the pictures, that are there, all the objects, but I haven't. I think there will be something on the website. I would imagine.
So probably right now would be a good opportunity to get the information out there for people who want to like the best way for people to follow your work.
Oh yeah.
Instagram. I don't know if anyone uses Facebook or anything like that anymore, but
Instagram, it's just Alice Teeple. I'm pretty easy to find. I do have a website, it's just aliceteeple.com. I keep it simple.
is the website something that gets a lot of traffic, and the people can people see some of the stuff current, like some of the current work on there?
I haven't put it up on my website yet just because I don't have like great images yet of all the objects. There wasn't a way to photograph them in my home, like flatteringly. You need like a white wall and stuff. I didn't have that space here. But I will as soon as, we get all that sorted out. And it's up on my Instagram now, like from the opening.
Thinking, the artist Mark Ryden?
Excuse me? Your computer, your microphone.
Yeah, the artist Mark Ryden.
I don't know that person.
A lot of his stuff, he has like a YouTube channel, like with all this like motile like pieces, like things moving, and
Ooh.
stuff is very this is what's coming to mind, like when you're describing this stuff, how it really lend itself to like some sort of like, because I also see that you're a video producer, editor, and that's like odds, I would love to see something like that, some piece that sort of incorporates all this stuff as like, some video piece or something.
That'd be awesome. Yeah. I mean, I guess I just haven't had the time, but I love to bring elements of visual like video to my media. Like one of the ideas I had was to have a video night at the gallery. I don't know if we're gonna do that or not, but um I did a series for this band called Cyborg and Muck. They needed projections for their concerts. So I did a series in Greenwood Cemetery. Don't tell them, but I did. And they they were all kind of connected where people I used Adrienne again. She was my model for the thing with my friend Rhiannon, and I just filmed them in two different cemeteries, doing like walking around and stuff. And I thought it kind of tied in beautifully with what I just put in the exhibit. And I thought it would be kind of neat to do like a video projections, but I'm but a mere mortal. So like it's hard for me to do all that stuff at once.
So you do this, this is like work for hire sort of stuff too, right?
Oh
Just
yeah, that's like my
getting,
bread and butter.
oh, that's what you do primarily is video editing?
And photography, yeah.
Photography. Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah. Like on a commercial level?
No, this is like, bands hire me. I'm not like hired by, like Vogue or anything. I'm mostly just kind of working with independent artists. Um, you know, Probably why I'm still living on like lentil soup, but where I feel creatively fulfilled, and I don't feel exploited. I feel like I'm doing like a lot of fun collaborations with people that I like working with, which I feel is a pretty good. It feels good to do that as opposed to like working in academia.
Cool. I didn't realize. Pretty cool. So what were some of the projects that your favorite projects or something like that?
I just did this really fun video with my friend. Her band's called Primitive Heart, and we just did a video up near Beacon, and we shot around there. Beacon's beautiful, like that whole area of the Hudson Valley is just everything's gorgeous. And so we did a video up there and in Letchworth Asylum again, and that was fun. A lot of photography jobs. I really just for me it's about connecting with the person that I'm working with and just seeing like what's your vision and what can we do together. I can't think of anything like specifically offhand, but that one up in Letchworth was fun. So
Video work is like demos or material beforehand. Sort of that's how you come up with the images, or is there a more of a collaborative process with that?
for the most part they let me have free reign because they kind of know what my style is, and then they'll give me the songs that they want to do the video for, and I'll listen to it and just think about like, oh, what's the vibe here, or what visions pop in my head. Sometimes it's very clear, and other times I need a little bit of a help in directing that vision. Like David Lynch said, it's like a big stream of fish that kind of swim through, and sometimes it's a big one, and sometimes it's just like a little minnow. But I try to be more instinctual with my work, that kind of thing, instead of going in with a big plan, because shit happens. Sometimes like the weather's bad, or something else comes up, or something comes in that you didn't plan for. That's really cool.
Yeah, sometimes it's funny that I'm the kind of person who likes to have everything outlined, and
Yeah.
and demoed and everything planned out in advance, and everything is like, completely, it's not fun by the time you get to do it because all the fun has been beaten out of it already by the time we get around to actually recording something or whatever.
Yeah.
But there is a lot of like impromptu, like on the spot creativity that happens even in such a restrictive, regimented approach that I have with music and other
Oh,
things.
totally. Yeah,
Yeah.
I see that as like a gift. It's like sometimes something pops in that's just like, I didn't plan this, but I love it. It looks really cool. Or it enhances something. You know, I love welcoming them, that kind of thing.
All right, so before we part, give us the rundown of the show and like where it's located and the dates and where people can find information about you, and even the website for the gallery too.
Sure. It's I believe it's sheltergallery.com. I would double check that. Oh, it's shelternewyorkcity.com. Shelternyc.com. Solve Et Coagula runs from December 15th, 2023 to January 21st, 2024. It's at 127 Eldridge Street. And yeah. Oh, it's also running with another show in the Weir Gallery called Precious Otherworld. So I want to plug them. They're really sweet people. But yeah, that's where it's at.
Awesome. Well, thanks so much for your time. I appreciate it. And I'm going to definitely take a trip over there to check this out probably after
Oh,
the
great.
first.
I didn't realize you were in the city.
I live in Jersey City. So
Oh,
it's like
amazing.
kind of like living in New York, but
Close enough.
no, I mean, I lived in Brooklyn for like several decades, and I just relocated out to Jersey fairly recently.
Oh, cool.
Yeah. No, it's going to be great. Looking forward to seeing it. All right, Alice. Thanks a lot.
It's a pleasure talking to you.
Great talking to you. Take care. Have a good night.
You too. Bye.
Bye.